All the best strategic advancements have come from like crushing errors. They're the ones that are the best teachers. And I think as a leader, Toto Wolff said it best, where they won everything that year. Everything went wrong that could go wrong in this. And they said, this is the day that our competitors should fear us the most, because it's the days that we fail. It's the days that we get better. It's a lot harder to learn from your mistakes when you're covered in champagne.
Welcome to Data and AI Mastery, the podcast where we bring you cutting-edge insights, practical advice, and inspiring stories from the leaders shaping the future of data and AI across the globe. I'm your host, Raoul-Gabriel Urma, founder of Cambridge Spark, the leader in transformational data and AI upskilling, career development, and progression. In each episode, I will be diving into real-world case studies of companies harnessing the power of AI to drive innovation, reduce costs, and create new business opportunities. So whether you're an aspiring data scientist, AI engineer, or seasoned executive, this show is designed to give you the tools and knowledge to stay ahead in a world where data is transforming every aspect of business. Stay ahead, stay inspired, stay masterful. Welcome to Data and AI Mastery. Hello, Ruth. How are you?
Fantastic. How are you, old friend?
Yeah, great to see you. It's been a little while. I was trying to remember. It's been over a decade since the Cambridge days.
Yeah, a long time. It feels like a long time ago, but also not that long. We like to think we're still young.
That's true. Time flies. I'm so excited to talk to you today for a few reasons. Like one, I think your journey has been so inspiring. Starting with engineering in Cambridge and getting to F1 as a race strategist for Ferrari, Sauber, Haas, and now in F1 TV. So just an amazing journey. So I can't wait to talk about it. And the second reason, I'm a big F1 geek myself. And I think there's a lot we can learn from what's happening in F1 for businesses around the data and AI. So can't wait to talk to you, Ruth.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's get into it.
All right. Well, look, to kick us off, maybe to paint the picture a little bit, can you tell us about the scale of the data world in F1? Like, what's the scale, the velocity, what's the variety of data that you have to deal with on a day-to-day?
So Formula One, we started from humble beginnings when it came for data. 75 years old this year. Obviously, our data point was a stopwatch and a lap time in a muddy Silverstone field around 75 years ago when we had our first race. And like many industries, we initially started off purely mechanical, cars designed with pencil and paper. And in the 90s was kind of our data revolution. And we went from pretty much having not enough data to having too much very rapidly. So the first time a Formula One car ever had any kind of monitoring or live telemetry on it was in the 1980s, 1986. It was a McLaren. It wasn't actually even a Formula One car. It was an Indy car in the States, and it had 14 channels on it. You could only get the data after the race when it was downloaded. It was McLaren that first started having a proper live data on a Formula One car, and for want of a better word, it was terrible. So 1986, the Australian Grand Prix, it told Alan Prost he'd run out of fuel. Like every good Aussie, he ignored the instructions, carried on to win the race. But from those humble beginnings, we've got a lot better. And now, our issue isn't not enough data or not correct data. It's actually trying to understand the data that we need within the sea that we have. So our data challenge is quite unique. A Formula One car produces around 1.1 million data points per second. We have around 300 sensors on each of Formula One cars. Each Formula One team has 2 cars, unless one of them is broken down. That data is being beamed live from a racetrack at around 200 miles an hour. And a lot of the data insights, aka which of those 1.1 million data points are actually useful for us in terms of trying to make the car go faster, trying to react to a strategy decision, try to optimize the driving. A lot of that work is done not locally at a racetrack. So, for example, we've just come back from Singapore, or we go racing in Melbourne, but up to a 10,000 mile trip away, with a lot of the teams, or all the teams, are based in Europe. So we actually beam the data, so beam those 1.1 million data points for 2 times of our cars from a race car that's traveling. It's about 20,000 mile round trip when we're going racing in Melbourne, running on teams, with various different kind of cloud partners, AI systems to generate insights, and back to the pit wall, back to the engineers that are going to communicate the insights, so the actual trained models output in less than a second. So there's a lot in there, right? So as a Formula One team, it's about, reliability. So good data centricity, good reliability.
Wow, that's fascinating because you've got a combination of high volume, but also low latency. Um, and you made an interesting point. Clearly, it's a lot of data collected, lots of sensors. Can you give a perspective around how do you decide what data is worth collecting or not? Because I guess there's several school of thought. One is let's just collect everything and we'll figure out later. It might be handy. But often the business world is, you want to be precise about what you collect, kind of like aligning it with some business outcome. So I guess, how do you make those decisions of we should collect this data on this sensor because we'll definitely benefit from it versus let's just collect it and figure out later?
It's a really good question. And actually, I think historically, a bit like many industries, we weren't very good at it. We just try and collect absolutely everything. But Formula One is a pressure cooker for marginal gain. So if we take the 2024 season, the average gap in terms of absolute performance between first and last is 1.3%. So the leader in the field is only 1.3% on average better than the absolute loser. And if taking it even more, so pole, for example, in the first 6 races of the season, so the first place in qualifying, was set by less than a tenth. The Japanese Grand Prix, for example, where Max Verstappen from Red Bull put it on pole by 12 thousandths, is the equivalent of 76 centimeters. So round a over 5 kilometer track, it's about as far away between myself and yourself in terms of how
Small
pole is
margins.
defined. So when you are driven by a sport where the differences between success and failure are such small margins, I think it's Emily Boserup's theorem, necessity is the mother of invention. Actually extracting the key insights that allow you to go faster than your competitor, allow you to recover from, mistakes or errors, allow you to predict, a weather pattern or be able to predict a tire performance marginally better than your competitor. And the better job you can do at extracting those insights, effectively, communicating the key changes that you need to do, the better you are. So it is really driven by necessity. So just like every other industry in the world, we were really hit hard as a sport by the financial crisis. Prior to the financial crisis, we kind of had a sport where we had the haves and the had-nots. A lot of the big manufacturer teams had a lot of money, a lot of big sponsorship that, all went away. And then we had a situation where, kind of prior to when the sport was sold in 2017 to a company called Liberty Media, the only team that was turning a profit was Scuderia Ferrari. Every other team was in the red, and we were losing teams every year. So now Formula One is a cost cap. So less cheating. You have to make your Formula One car for the same price as everybody else. So that becomes an efficiency formula, which is why actually the data race is a real race within the story. So AI, for example, being able to augment what you do and being able to do more with less, being able to free up the resource that graduates like myself did manually or semi-manually 15 years ago, actually being able to do that programmatically by having kind of modular AI applications to answer the same questions that you were using, manpower for 15 years ago, allows you to get that tiny little extra marginal gain in performance. So we really are driven by the level of competition, and the biggest feedback loop in Formula One happens 24 times a year. We don't get quarterly reports.
I'd love to hear your thoughts around, once we've got the data collected, a big challenge that a lot of business faces, how do you translate data into actionable insight that move the needle? How does it work in the F1 world? Maybe, either on the racetrack or off the racetrack, if you collect all of this data, it's amazing. What happens next? Like, how do you use it to inform improvements?
It's a really good question again. So broadly, the way that we use data as engineers goes down into kind of 3 main buckets. So one is improving our own performance. So finding the key KPIs based on, the wealth of experience that we've had before that are going to make a car go marginally faster around a racetrack, for example, or be slightly better in terms of the way that it's using the tires, for example. So the integral of performance along a stint is slightly better, or improve the drivability. That means that the driver is able to extract more from the package that you have. The second kind of pillar is competitor analysis, which is our engineer speak for copy somebody else's homework. So we want to be always looking at what someone else is doing. We have a lot of game theory. So for example, rear wing level, effectively in Formula One, we have a lot of racetracks, your kind of like standard racetracks, where you can put more downforce on, so you can have a bigger rear wing, and it will go faster over one lap. So your raw lap time in qualifying, for example, will be faster. You can take the same configuration of car, only change the rear wing, go for a skinny rear wing where the total lap time for over one time lap is slightly slower, but your top speed on the straights is higher. So you can take qualifying position versus raceability, because if you have sitting on pole with your massive rear wing, you start the race and you're 6 or 7 kph down on the straights, for example, you'll just get overtaken by the entire field. You'll be kind of a proverbial sitting duck. So competitor analysis to try to understand the KPIs that are going to expose you, understand what your sensitivity is very important. And then finally, race strategy, which is every good unreliable narrator like myself, obviously as a person that spent their entire life in race strategy, is clearly the most important of the 3 pillars, is about how do you actually go racing? How do you predict the key elements that are going to be the difference between deciding whether or not a strategy is going to be a 1-stop or a 2-stop, or predicting whether rain is going to hit and what tyre you need to fit. And all 3 of those pillars comes down to that feedback loop of what makes you faster. And the homework that we do is born into simulation to really understand our sensitivities. So we do, when you go see a race, for example, that is the kind of the tip of the iceberg. And a lot of the homework that teams do in terms of preparation is, as you say, really trying to understand what are we most sensitive to.
I hope you're enjoying today's conversation. If you're finding the insights useful, please do take a moment to subscribe to the Data and AI Mastery podcast and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Every new follow helps us reach more people and shed the incredible work being done by today's data and AI leader. All right, let's go back to the episode. And you talked about race strategy, and it really resonates because in the business world, any good strategy needs a diagnosis. What's your understanding of the market? What choices are you going to make? So there's quite lots of parallel, which takes me nicely to actually strategy at the race. Being an F1 geek, I love your perspective because, you're there at the race, you've got all the data, right? You can see what's happening on the track, your competitors, you've got all your models, and you got to make some decisions, right? Like, are we going to pay it? Are we not going to pay it? Are we going to wait? Can you give us an example perhaps where you went against the data? Like, because there's one argument, if the data is so good, if you've got the best model in the world, why not let strategy be entirely driven by the data in the model? Why should we still have a human input into it?
So I think that's there's a kind of twist on that, which is that human experience, when people often ask, how much of it is a data-driven decision and how much of it is a gut feel, as long as my audience is geeky enough, I just reply, well, actually, your gut feel is just an LLM of your own experience. You're on a pit wall.
That's fair.
And actually, as a, let's say someone that's more hands on keyboard, someone that's writing one of these simulations that's going to output the data set, if your conclusions and if your approach is being challenged by somebody with more real world experience, in 9 out of 10 times that is actually a second order effect that you haven't modeled. For example, you're missing something. So there's potentially some kind of level in that is based on like an effect that you're not capturing. Let's take overtaking, for example, that actually, to overtake one car versus to overtake a train of cars is not, the sum of its parts. It's very, very different. It's different for a driver. It's different in terms of the instabilities. It's different in terms of when you're physically going offline. So, you need to add that to your modeling. 1 out of 10 times when you're talking to somebody that says there, it's the human error element. And actually, as humans, there's lots of medical papers written about it. We have a huge anchor bias to extreme events in our memory. So just like in business, you don't remember the average day. You remember really good moments and really bad moments, or really good strategies and really bad strategies. And often it's very, very important to, numerically challenge that anchor bias. Even my own experience where, it's very easy to, you've been racing a track for 15 years now and you say, the undercut here works really well. Like I remember we undercut 5 cars with Kimi Räikkönen and Kimi in 2018, but actually for the other 9 of them, it was actually faster to do something else. So I think challenging why somebody has a different conclusion is really important. And in Formula One, there's 2 parts. There's making data-driven decisions, and then there's executing well. And the 2 things are very separate. It is always important in Formula One to make a data-driven decision. And, we're not making decisions on perfect data sets. The best way that I've kind of described it is that it's like you're looking after somebody else's portfolio. No head of strategy, as of right now, unfortunately, myself including, has ever owned the Formula One team. We don't own our own, our own portfolio. We are entrusted through our skills and our team's skills to be able to come up with the best menu of options, so the best number of different, stock options, for example, and to equate to the best of our abilities the risk versus reward profile of that, and to kind of present that to the stakeholders, which is usually your CEO that represents the team owners, for example, and the drivers that are able to, whether or not they can actually execute those plans. And so our job is to say, and the answer can be different, right? If you have the fastest car with the fastest driver and you're starting from the front row, you don't, it's silly to take a level of overhead of risk that you don't need to. If, for example, you are starting last with maybe one of the slower cars with a driver that's, not a world champion, actually there's a lot of, kind of like, there's an opportunity cost to not taking risk, because in Formula One, it's only the top 10 cars that score. And actually, if you don't take any risk, you're pretty much guaranteed to fail. So actually, the safest option is usually a bit like when you're building a portfolio, to take 2 different risky options with your 2 cars that actually overall are covering 2 ends of a spectrum, that gives you a slightly safer portfolio. So, whether or not that reality actually happens, it's very important to make data-driven decisions, because whether they go right or whether they go wrong, they allow you to improve the process, if that makes sense, moving forward.
So clearly, as a race strategist, there's a set of skills that are really important to be successful, to execute on the strategy. And I can't help but relate that to the business world, especially with scale-ups. When you're growing fast, you're also competing to get business, and it can be really stressful. You have to communicate your strategy really well to people in the organization. So is there any sort of insights you've got from your world that, in terms of leadership skills or skill set to kind of like help with execution, that might be useful for people in the scale-up world?
That's really good. I think in Formula One, there's 2 main things. I think when you look at successful individuals within Formula One, the kind of, traits that you see over and over again, from kind of the engineering side. The first, I think, is actually finding that pressure is a privilege. And I think if you talk to any
Embrace the
CEO,
pressure.
embrace the pressure and embrace those moments. And, if you find let's take strategist, for example, because it's what I'm doing. If you find a Formula One strategist that is not looking forward to the race day or a wet to dry qualifying, that's what you're doing it for. That's why, if you do every Formula One race, you're away from home for 6 months a year, you're working, long hours. There's much more efficient ways to make money than to be a Formula One engineer. You're doing it because you love that job. And there's many roles even within Formula One that have a very different balance of pressure, or just, everybody's under pressure, but at different times, and actually, if you are not enjoying and embracing that pressure. And then I think secondly, when it comes to kind of the traits, it's creating a culture that encourages failing forward. Because in Formula One, it's a weird industry, because in most places, if you spent £1 million worth of development budget on something that gave you, let's say 0.02% improvement in your product that your competitor could copy within 6 races, 6 weeks, for example, you'd probably, and you failed 5 times and you came up with one idea that added a small marginal gain that could be copied almost immediately, you'd be in trouble. In Formula One, you probably get a promotion because that actually represents like a significant improvement. And I think creating a culture where, you are allowed and encouraged to fail, and you're allowed to, and it's a NASA term, we take a lot of stuff from NASA, like pull at the strings of failure. is the way that you make progress and is the way you go forward. The whole we go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard. And I think, kind of having a culture where, the only way you go forward is by failing, like the whole Edison 83 times to make a light bulb, or we'd all be sitting in the dark, that you kind of have to work your way through the no's. Like if I told you that if you find 20 different ways to develop an element on the floor that's going to add performance and the first 19 would fail, but by the time you tried the 20th idea, you'll get it. How quickly would you work your way through all of the no's and all of the failures? And all the best, all the best strategic advancements have come from like crushing errors. They're the ones that are the best teachers. And I think as a leader, Toto Wolff said it best after this, awful Hockenheim Grand Prix they did back in 2018, I believe it was. Where they won everything that year, everything went wrong that could go wrong in this, and they said, this is the day that our competitors should fear us the most, because it's the days that we fail, it's the days that we get better. It's a lot harder to learn from your mistakes when you're covered in champagne.
I really love that. That's really inspiring. So, combination of passion and feeling forward, like you say, right? Like having this culture of we're trying stuff out. And it might not work out, but you know what? We'll come out stronger if it doesn't work out because we'll learn from it, and that's going to push the organization forward. I think every startup organization can learn from that. So thank you, Ruth. And I guess maybe like a final question to take you to the AI space. We clearly talked about some really interesting use cases. How do you see the future of F1 or even F1 broadcasting with AI? What are the sort of things that you're excited about for the field?
So I think there's so many different things that are changing kind of every single week. Like we're coming up with new. So I work with AWS. We've got new insights where it's basically if you can believe it and you can imagine it, they can do it, which is amazing. After working within a Formula One team where we have slightly more limited resource, the thing that I'm most excited about because we have such a deep repository of it is the kind of the AI applications to do with video databases. So Amazon Nova that launched this year. Kind of when you think we've got 75 years worth of broadcast video,
that's insane.
and the ability to kind of programmatically look at give me every single time that Pierre Gasly was overtaken into braking, and then you can have a go at that, give me every single time that which Lewis Hamilton wore gold
through a natural language query.
Exactly.
Wow,
so everything from the broadcast, but even the socials, for example, transcription, and actually really bringing the story to the fans as well, because it's very important when you're trying to grow a global sport like we are, and especially we're growing very quickly and very rapidly in the States ever since Drive to Survive. 11% year-on-year growth this year alone in our half-term report that came out in August. When it came to that, and our audience is getting bigger, younger, and more diverse. And it's really important that we are able to use and leverage the AI solutions that we have to explain what's going on simultaneously to fans that have been watching it for 30 years, to our incredibly informed fans, also to be able to tell the data stories to, a new generation of fans that maybe don't have as much information. There's kind of boundless abilities to be able to make it customer facing, make it fan facing, and actually make sure that, we are able to capture and analyze what makes our sport great, what makes our sport not so good, so that we can, as a sport, make sure that we're telling the best stories, we're not missing anything, and keeping our fans entertained and giving them as far as we can what they want to see.
That's great. I love it because it's really, you can have an opportunity to focus on the customer a lot more. And again, I guess back to business, we focus a lot on do more with less, cost efficiency, automation, which is one part of the story. The other is how do you delight your customer more? And I think what you're describing here is through AI, you have an opportunity to create a new experience for the audience, get them closer to the action, feel part of the data and the videos themselves. So I think business can learn from that too, right? Focusing a bit more on the customer and the innovation. Super cool, Ruth. So I've got 3 very short quickfire round of questions.
I love a quickfire.
Well, I can't wait to find out the answers to this question. I think the first one is, let's be geeky a little bit. What is your favorite programming language?
Oh, do you know what? I have to say Python, because I was told I was a boomer. I'm a boomer. I'm a millennial, by the way, not even close to a boomer. By some members of my team, because I was taught MATLAB at university.
Yeah.
We both went to the same university at Cambridge, and ahead of the pandemic shutdown. I was told that I was a boomer for only using MATLAB and not for bearing in mind I wasn't a hands-on keyboard anymore and hadn't been for about 5 years. But I kind of entertained my space in the Python environment and then came back and I was accepted by the Gen Zers. So I like an open source language, and I love the fact that it's moving towards that space.
All right, Python's my favorite too. So
Good answer.
it's good answer.
Neither of us are boomers.
Yeah. Next one is, what was your favorite subject back at school?
Maths or physics, basically both of them. So like I quite like kind of I guess I ended up doing engineering for a reason. But yeah, applying maths to fix problems. So it was like a really good maths problem. It wasn't very cool. Applying a maths problem, or like physics where you got to like find a solution to something. So.
Nice. Applied maths, understand nature through data. I love that.
Yeah.
And the final question. So you travel a lot, so you must keep yourself entertained with some good music. So what's your favorite music genre?
Well, we did just say I was a millennial, and you can see my white glasses. It's going to be Taylor Swift, isn't it? But
Excellent.
so, yeah, there's ways in which I'm an individual, and then there's ways where it's Taylor Swift. So I've been listening to 100% Swiftie. So
Doing the Barry's bootcamp classes.
yeah, they are amazing, and I do like get an extra few calories when it's the Taylor Swift session.
Yeah, that resonates. I'm with you. Great. Well, Ruth, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
What an amazing conversation with Ruth. I mean, her passion is absolutely incredible. There were so many really interesting nuggets out of this conversation. First of all, the world of F1 is so rich in data, huge scale, huge variety, and velocity. The data comes really fast. Now, what I thought was really interesting here is, what can business learn out of the environment? Clearly, in the F1 world, it's really important that you learn through failure. Actually, failure is encouraged. You got to experiment, and failure moves you forward. But how do you learn from failure? Through data. So by capturing all those data points, all those insights that are coming from all those sensors, you can review the data, you can do debugging, root cause analysis, learn, and then progress forward and improve the car and the team. The other nuggets that I thought was really fascinating is that it's a unique environment whereby you have such high competition, such high pressure, and you also have a cost cap. So you have to figure out how to do more with less, but also how do you keep driving innovation at pace? And to do that, you need a combination of passion. So everyone in F1 that joins F1 is highly passionate about this environment. And second of all, is the culture, the people driving innovation and having this learning mindset. So I think those takeaways are directly applicable to the world of business, where companies are growing and they have to figure out how to compete themselves in the market. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in on the Data and AI Mastery Show, and see you on the next episode. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Data and AI Mastery. If you found value in today's discussion, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an insight from the leaders driving the future of data and AI. And if you're a data and AI leader looking to upskill your workforce with the fundamental data and AI skills to transform your business, Cambridge Spark is here to guide you every step of the way. Be sure to reach out to us on LinkedIn or on our website, cambridgespark.com. Until then, be sure to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with data, and remember, mastery comes with continued learning and action. Until next time, stay ahead, stay inspired, and stay masterful.